Time to get tides out. I'm Brian Lilley with the Rebel.media. It's time to clean up Canadian politics, and that means shutting down foreign money from groups like the TIDES Foundation, but also changing the rules on what third parties can actually do in elections. A few years ago, my fellow Rebel, Christopher Wilson, started a petition to get TIDES Foundation money out of BC politics, where it looks like they just had a major impact on the election. Well, I want to take this idea national now. I've been telling you about foreign money from the likes of TIDES and the Oaks Foundation out of Switzerland for some time, not to mention international labor unions, all of them funneling money into Canadian political causes, like making sure conservatives or free enterprise-oriented parties, such as we have them, are never elected again. Well, today I want you to join our campaign to clean up foreign financing and rewrite the rules on what third parties can do. And you can help by signing our petition at tidesout.ca and by supporting the work we do. I'll give you more information on all of that in a moment, but first, let me explain the problem. First off, foreign money. We've known about foreign money paying for AstroTurf campaigns like the one the Rockefeller Foundation organized against the oil sands for years now. You remember that one from back in about 2008 or so? The Rockefeller Brothers Fund, a foundation built with money from J.D. Rockefeller striking it rich with Standard Oil in the late 1800s. Well, they organized a campaign that brought together Canadian activists and lots of U.S. foundations with lots of American money to make sure that Canadian oil stayed in the ground. The plan was to use the American money to fund environmental groups and First Nations groups, and by doing so, it looked to many like there was this grassroots support for stopping the development of Canada's oil industry. They called for no refineries, no pipelines. The reality is that support, well, the support for these initiatives anyway, came from wealthy Americans who found willing Canadian partners to act like the whole country was against this. In fact, it wasn't. Now, since that time, tactics have evolved, and now we've got groups like TIDES and Oaks and plenty of others funding Canadian activists to campaign during elections. It's shocking that there hasn't been more mainstream media party attention to this. A soon-to-be-released report has generated a couple of headline stories, but still not much, and still a pittance compared to the amount of broadcast minutes, lines of ink, and pixels that Canadian media have spent talking about Russians having interfered in the American presidential election. Can you imagine for a moment the reaction from Canada's left-wing media? Well, if there were any evidence that the Russians or foreign corporations or foundations had sent money to Canada to help get Stephen Harper and the Conservatives elected in 2015, with evidence or not, it would have been a nonstop din of calls for a judicial inquiry. And yet, with evidence of American money influencing the 2015 election, we're told there's nothing to worry about it. Don't worry about a thing. Vice, that favorite news outlet of the left, is already out with a news story disputing the idea that American money from TIDES and the like played a role in the 2015 vote. Their proof? Well, the report that's creating these few media stories and some interest is from a group called Canada Decides that has two former Conservative MPs, potential victims of this American money. They're associated with the report, so Vice dismisses it. That and the amount spent on advertising by groups like Lead Now and Dogwood Initiative, they say, are just too small. Well, I can explain all of that because the writer of the piece doesn't seem to understand what actually went on with the campaigns at Lead Now and Dogwood Initiative. First off, the Conservatives are involved, that's of no consequence. As Warren Kinsella, the liberal master of the dark arts, tweeted, "We simply cannot let this happen, the foreign funding." So, John-Pierre Kingsley also joined in. He's the former head of Elections Canada. He said there are loopholes and they need to be shut. We simply cannot allow any kind of money that is not Canadian to find its way into the Canadian electoral system. This backdoor whereby foreign money came into Canada must be shut. We have got to slam it shut for the sake of the integrity of our electoral system. Hey, I agree. Now, what backdoor is he talking about? Well, it's something I told you about back in April, something that came from a Senate committee hearing. No amount of foreign money is too much to shovel at a Canadian activist group as long as the timing is right.
There's an obvious loophole there, which is if I take the contribution 6 months plus a day and I, save it until the writs drop, I'm now using unlimited foreign funds because there is no restriction on the amounts. And I can use that for my election activity.
Then, if the money was received before the 6 months, it comes mingled into the funds of the third party, and then the third party, under the regime as we have it now, is free to use that money.
What do we know about foreign funding of Canadian third-party activists in the last election? Well, we know that TIDES gave close to $2 million to third parties or groups like the CISU Institute that then funded third parties. So once they got their American dollars, what did these organizations do? Well, that's the second part I want to talk to you about. They ran what I call shadow campaigns against Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. And for local Liberal and NDP candidates, they backed them, the ones that they thought could best beat the local Conservative. Now, I'm hearing from lots of people angry that these groups may have violated the law by running campaigns that broke Canada's third-party election spending limits, that they spent too much on ads. Perhaps, but we'll have to wait for the official report and see if any investigations uncover anything to know about that for sure. But what really bothers me, though, is that these groups may have also acted completely within the law and still had a huge impact on the election because our law is so outdated. Elections Canada only monitors advertising done by third parties. Only advertising. That means old-fashioned newspaper ads, radio or TV ads, an online banner, a Facebook ad, that sort of thing. But running a phone bank operation to call in favor of a candidate or against another, sending people door to door to campaign for one side or another, sending text message reminders or emails to go and vote on voting day, all the things that campaigns rely on to win, none of that counts against third-party spending limits, just the old-fashioned advertising. That has to change. Even in the United States, land of big money politics and free speech, the types of groups that run similar shadow campaigns, they're regulated. Now, Canada has long had restrictions on third parties in elections, and attempts to challenge those regulations, those restrictions in court, such as Stephen Harper and the NCC's Supreme Court challenge, well, those have failed. The courts and Parliament have said they have a place in Canadian society. So if we're going to have regulations on third parties, don't you think that they should count? They need to cover these shadow campaigns where right now they can spend unlimited amounts of money and even use foreign money from groups like the San Francisco-based TIDES Foundation to do it. So if you agree with me that this needs to change, then I'm going to ask for your help. I'm going to ask you to sign our petition at tidesout.ca. That's tidesout.ca, and call on the federal government to fix all of this. And while you're there, I'm also going to ask you to consider chipping in to The Rebel with a donation so that we can continue to follow stories like this on a daily basis. You won't see this story on CBC with their billion-dollar subsidy, but us, we're entirely supported by you, our viewers. So if you like what we do, then any donation, $5, $10, $25, $100 or more if you can, that'll keep us going, helping us do the work that the other guys won't. If you like the Rebel video you just watched, make sure you never miss a Rebel video again. Click here to subscribe to our YouTube channel.